All right, welcome everyone. Definitely thank you guys for tuning in. Harriet, I am super excited about this because I think as you and I have probably talked for months, I mean, this, law and finance are just something that a lot of times churches just don't really get it sometimes. And not any fault of their own. So I'm excited to be talking about this. But I guess before we jump into it, how was your week? We'll give people a little bit of time to hop on as we're broadcasting.
My week was good. I was here hoping that we would get some of that snow that came south. We didn't in Columbia, but all is well. Been a productive week. How about yourself?
It's been good. I think I'm still working on this whole process of
That's my
taking Sundays off. Because I get into this mode where I'm like, when you get in when you're building your own business, get into this mode where you're working like 7 days a week,
hmm
and I'm just like, that something about this ain't right.
uh-huh. Right. It ain't healthy, bro. It ain't healthy and it ain't God. Okay. You gotta rest sometime.
Yes, yes. So Sunday is kind of like my
That's your day.
rest day.
Okay.
To where I was just like, I'm not even gonna look at a computer screen tomorrow. I mean,
hmm
yesterday, and
First of all,
I
I'm proud of
was.
you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, man. That take a lot.
It's one thing to say you're not gonna do it. It's another thing to actually
Actually
do
do
it.
it. And I'm speaking from a self-proclaimed workaholic.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I'm
I
proud of
tell people, like, I used to tell people I'm a recovering workaholic.
you.
I'm getting better at it.
Okay.
But it was good though. But I do think it gave me a chance to kind of like, taking the Sundays back gave me a chance to really take some time back to think through, some stuff that I am working on. And I find like coming into Monday,
Mhm.
like I'm like more productive because my thoughts are a lot clearer. So it was a good weekend.
Good. I'm glad. I started probably the end of December last year. I had to be strategic about my rest, Terrell, because I would work every day. Even though I love God and church. I would put church on one screen live since the pandemic started, and I got multiple screens as probably you do. Church will be on this screen and work will be on this screen. I was like, oh, I can do it simultaneously. I can get God and not these. Oh man, so yeah, like I had to pause. You need to rest and reset, and like you said, you're fresh until the start of the week, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, looks like we got. I mean, people started coming in, so we'll hop into the topic. And I'll say before we do jump in, it's been snow and ice in the Carolinas, so definitely, if you guys are driving, you're in the car, please be smart about driving. Like ice does not discriminate on anybody's vehicle.
It doesn't.
So please be smart if you're out and about. I know here in Charlotte, like yesterday, I think there was like 41, car accidents prior to 2:30 p.m. So, I mean, situation on the road is a bit dicey in some places. So if you are out driving, please, 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 be smart about it.
Be be safe. Watch out for
Yes.
black ice. You might can drive in those conditions, but the people down here can't. I used to live up north, and so I can drive in the snow, but the people here can't. Stay home. And if somebody hits your chariot, don't worry, call Harriet. Okay, famous book. Okay, sorry, Terrell. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, and I think that's because first I want to start off with for there are people joining the live that they may not know me, they may not know or know you, or they know you but they don't know me, and vice versa. So I wanted to kind of start off with kind of why we wanted to even do this new series. I mean, around church and law, and then also talk about your background, my background, and I think in general when it comes down to legal and finance topics, I mean, that's just not something, even growing up in the church, that's not something that I really heard a lot of people, talk about or be privy to. Now, I'm one of those, I guess you say, unique people. I was blessed that my father was always pretty involved in the different churches that we went to. So there were some conversations that he was in, and I guess as whether it was a deacon or an elder in different churches, depending on where we were in the world at the time. I mean, that it really opened my eyes that there's a whole lot more to just than just showing up on Sundays,
Right.
preaching a good sermon and going home.
Right.
There's a whole lot more to it. And so we really wanted to talk about that because, my background as a CPA is, I mean, finance and accounting is what I live and breathe. I mean, with working with different clients on helping them really understand that part of their operations and their organization. And the truth of the matter is, if you don't manage it well, things go bad very fast. I mean, whether you're a nonprofit or whether you're a for-profit, if you don't manage the finances, things go bad pretty quickly. Now, on the legal side, which is, your area of expertise, can you tell us a little bit about, your background, just kind of your
I will.
perspective?
And give me 2 seconds. Can I touch on something you just talked about, managing finance
Yeah,
as well?
go ahead.
That's not just Terrell, the CPA, that's Bible. So if you are familiar with the scriptural story of the tough ruler, and he gave gifts or tasks to people. The one he gave 5, to one he gave 2, to one he gave 1, and they were to manage it while he was away. And when he came back, he took an assessment of what did they do. And the one who managed the 5, he did it well. He gave him 5 more. The one who managed the 2, he did it well. He got 2 more. So the 5 became 10. The 2 became 4. And the person who did 1, they buried it. They didn't manage it well. And so then they took that one away and gave it to the person who had 10. It's very similar in churches. You will not get more if you're not doing well with that what you already have. So managing resources in the church is pivotal and vital. And it's not just from Terrell, the CPA. God gave us that example that I think perfectly applies to what you're saying. Okay, that's my sidebar. Okay. So I am Harriet Lampkin. I am an attorney by trade and by purpose, because I think that the Lord has called me to do this. I grew up United Methodist in a small country church. And while United Methodist is very, very organized and structured, right? The Methodists, they have a method. What I've seen a lot of churches is, if you're non-denominational or something else, you don't have that structured discipline to follow. You have to learn or surround yourself with people who know how to put the right practices, policies, and procedures in place. And so I've, too, Terrell, not heard a lot of churches discussing, hey, this is what we should be doing financially, legally, and hey, we don't know, so let's hire somebody. That's a cuss word in the church. Hire somebody. We just want somebody to volunteer, right? To come in and be knowledgeable, whether your church has 50 people or 50,000 people, because the same practices are in place for success, regardless of the size of your church. And so I provide legal guidance to a lot of churches who ask, who the Lord lay on my heart, who want to go to the next level. I've been an attorney now maybe 12, 13 years. I don't even know no more, right? Working in the corporate realm, but also working with churches and nonprofits. And so one of the things I want to say, what successful churches, I see what they do differently. I made a joke of it, but they hire professionals. You don't have to know everything. You don't need to know. But sometimes you can't just outsource it to a volunteer in the church. You want a professional who is skilled with the skill set of what you need to do and how to do it properly. They have legal accountants on their team, legal persons on their team. They have accountants on their teams. Terrell and I have been friends for a while. I met Terrell through my husband, who you and Jeff have been friends forever. But a lot of times when churches bring me on for legal stuff, I refer Terrell, because when I see assessment of their situation, I'm like, hey, y'all need a CPA, right? And it really helps to have a CPA who knows the Lord. So I put Terrell's turn on most of the churches that I work with. I say, you guys should contact Terrell and just be proactive into putting policies, procedures, and things in place, and be IRS compliant. So I kind of try to help churches get to where they need to be so they can grow how the Lord wants them to grow.
Absolutely, man. And I love it. And we do appreciate you, the amazing referrals that you send our way. And not just from the standpoint of us being able to build our business, because what I end up finding with even, from you and from other people who send people our way, like, hey, you need to contact Terrell and TL Turner Group. And sometimes what we end up finding is, for some of them, they just need a little bit of guidance. There's some things that they were unsure about, that where you don't need to hire us. You just need a little bit of guidance. Here are some, some rules, or here's some parameters, and you're good to go. Then there are some that are like, hey, based on what you're doing, you actually need us to come in to help, set things up and like work through some stuff, because maybe you're a church leader and you inherited a situation to where it's like, hey, we need to do a cleanup work. But once we get to the cleanup, here are the rules, or here are the standards you can kind of hold in place, and you can kind of manage it going. And then there are some that's just like, hey, based on what we got going on, we just need to outsource this to, like I said, hiring someone outside to just manage this ongoing. And I think, what that process has really taught me is, there are a lot of people at different levels. Again, you may just need insight and direction, which this show will be great for people. I mean, is just being able to ask questions, things that you have questions on. Now, I do want to make it very, very clear to everyone, please do not take what we say here that we're speaking to a broad audience. Do not take what we say as personal counsel.
I got you. This is my lane. I got you. Warning. The subject matters and topics discussed here are for informational purposes. They do not create a contractual relationship with the T.L. Turner Group, Terrell Turner, Harriet, Lampkin, and Lampkin Law Firm. They're informational only. They're not considered legal counsel, financial counsel. If you would like us to represent you, contact our offices and we can do a consultation to see if we meet your needs. This is purely informational. Do not sue us. Okay, continue.
This is why you need someone who understands the law on your team. And it's one of those things that I a question that came up because prior to, wouldn't even say prior, I'll say simultaneously, like when I was going through college, my summers were interning as a administrative pastor of a Assemblies of God church, to where my entire summers were me going to the church. I mean, Monday through Friday, I was there, whether it was doing hospital visits or just being in the office doing a lot of the administrative stuff. And I saw a lot of that stuff. And even while I did that for about 6 years, and then I would say like the latter 3 years, I was actually working my full-time career as a external auditor in accounting, to where it's like I was seeing things and understanding things. Like, I'm trained as an accountant to really understand numbers and finance. And at the same time, I had that experience. And one of the things that really jumped out to me that I think really needs to be discussed is the relationship that churches have with people that they're paying or people that are providing some type of service. To where naturally, I think a lot of churches lean to, oh, we'll just go the volunteer route. But then there are some relationships where a contract is probably needed in that situation, so I definitely wanted to dive into that a little bit more and talk about, like, what are, from your perspective, Harry, when you look at different churches, when it comes to the subject matter of contracts, how have you seen churches behave? Have you seen them use contracts wisely, or how have you seen them approaching that?
Whew, loaded question. So I've seen a gamut. Yeah, I work with hundreds of churches. I've been working with churches for years. I've worked with hundreds of churches of all sizes, and I see a few things. Okay, I've seen too many times. I've seen no contracts, handshakes. I know them. They members here. They give. Or the biggest giver in the church recommends somebody. Oh, brother so and so know them. They good people. Hey, but don't make no business decisions on they good people, right? Because the devil lurks at churches because they know we sometimes too trustworthy. Okay, so I've seen the no contract. We know them. So and so speak highly of them. Let's go to. We don't get contracts. We don't check references. We don't see if they licensed, bonded, and insured. And then when they come and do the work, they have to do it. They scam you. They start this project. They go away. They hustle you. Then I get called saying, "Harry, fix it." Oh, y'all should come in the front, and I would say, "Hey, let's check these out. Let's vet these people." Okay, so I see the no contract. I see the handshake. I see the recognizing we need a contract. I'm gonna print something off of Google and have them sign. I tell people all the time, don't mistake your Google search with an attorney's law license. Okay, it's different. You get what you pay for. Google was free. With this lawsuit that you're gonna have to file because you got hustled, not so much. Right? So you try, you need a contract, but you don't have the terms in place, right? Liability and risk and liquidated damages and all of these things that you need, because you don't know you need it until you need it. But someone who's skilled to tell you these things, who has some wisdom, can say we need it. And then I've seen churches who, okay, we sophisticated, we business oriented, we got it, right? They might have attorneys on staff or they outsource with a firm, and those are the three scenarios that I see. Handshakes. We need a contract, but we're just going to put something together ourselves and don't have all the right terms. Or then we have it all together. And it's the previous two, the no contract and let's sign this form, but it's going to say, I'm going to pay you to do X. but no qualifications on what X needs be, what happens if F's not done timely, what happens if you screw me on X. So those are the things that I see, honestly, and we have to rectify it.
And I want to go back to what you talked about with the handshakes, because from different people I've talked to, and no matter what denomination, no matter, even when I've traveled around the world and talking to ministers or church administrators, when it comes down to just this sense of, hey, they're good people. I believe they're good people. I don't believe they're going to take advantage of me. Like, do I really need to have a contract in place? And I'm curious as to, when a person has that perspective, how do you kind of help them kind of understand, like, why they still need, I know you got God and I know you got faith, but this is why you still need a contract.
I tell people all the time, Judas was a disciple with Jesus. He still hustled him. He still played him. So I always go back to biblical examples when I'm speaking to kingdom-minded people. Now, did Jesus need a contract with Judas? No, he knew that was part of his mission. But you're not Jesus. You're not all-knowing. So therefore, you don't know if these people are going to play you. And so if they're reputable business people, a contract shouldn't be an issue. And we would hope that people are going to do what they say they're going to do, but that's not always the case. So it's business, not personal. And if they are reputable or as good of people as you say that they are, then they'll have no issue agreeing to the terms on paper, signing off on it, and doing exactly what you specify that they need to do. And the church will have no problem paying the people, because this contract situation goes two ways. I always talk about the people hustling the church, but I've seen churches hustle people too. These people come out here and give you what they said that y'all agreed upon, and then they don't get paid. So a contract just protects both interests. And am I saying that good, godly people will lie to you? Yes, I am. Really, they really will. Right? But no, it's just contracts protect everybody's interest. And if we're using wisdom, okay, and we're protecting the Lord's resources, and churches, we're doing what we said we're going to do, all they do is help. And so we need them. They're desperately needed, from the most minute, simple thing, right, to the most serious thing. They're necessary.
Yeah. And I mean, I would agree from a operational standpoint. One of the things that I found when it came down to contracts was that it really made it clear as to what was going to happen. And I think that became very important, because a lot of times when different people were doing different stuff, I mean, I guess you say a church organization is not just like, hey, you got this one pastor or minister that makes all the decisions and nobody else involved. Because I think what happened in some situations I saw, where the pastor made an agreement with someone to come do something, and then nobody else was involved in that decision. So other people started having legitimate questions.
Right.
And since there was nothing in writing and the pastor wasn't around to explain it, it turned into an issue that probably, if it was in writing and it was documented, like what was happening, everybody would have been on the same page. People would have been like, oh, okay, we hired this person to do X. This is what they're going to do. Okay, cool. No problem. But I do think when you fail to have that in place, it definitely creates a lot of unnecessary confusion. I mean, because even from a finance standpoint, one of the things that, that I've told, whether it's a church or a non-for-profit, I mean, whatever your situation is, anytime that money is going to change hands, you want to have it documented as to why that money is changing hands. What did you get in return? Because there have been probably some legitimate things where, let's say, church had some wiring that went out. You knew an electrician, had an electrician come in to do it. You ended up paying the electrician, and other people didn't know that there was an agreement. So now rumors are starting to circulate, like, hey, well, they're giving this person money, and they're, and it's just like, hey, it was a legitimate transaction. But I do think if you don't have the contract in place, it hurts it causes unnecessary confusion. So one of the things you mentioned about, like I said, with the terms. So when it comes down to like contracts, I mean, and like I said, people may go on Google and they'll search and they'll look. You mentioned a couple of the common terms. Can you kind of repeat some of those? Like, what are some of the common terms that, hey, you want to make sure you spell these type of things out in whatever agreement that gets signed?
So some of the things that I think that there should definitely be in there, of course, who's doing who, what, when, where, why, right? So who are you contracting with? What are they doing? Your pay terms. What does payment look like? Is it half up front, half on completion? Are there milestones that people must reach to get different amounts of payment? Is liability insurance required, right? Any type of liability insurance. If they're going to be coming on your premises, doing work on your property, who's responsible if something goes wrong while this project may be going on? It depends on what the contract is going to be. Indemnification. If they mess up something that messes up your business, who's going to pay for that? If we were to file a lawsuit, is it arbitration only? Must we mediate, try to work it out first? Who's going to pay for legal expenses? If you're a church and you have locations in multiple states, or the contractors coming from out of state, whose laws are going to govern? These are just some of the terms that need to go into, because it's not until a problem arises and you have to deal with this stuff, none of these things were spoken on. And it could be, and I'm like, Terrell, if you call me, I know a lot of people are money hungry in the business world. I can speak for me and Terrell. That's not us. If you call me and say, hey, my church wants to do this, do you think X, Y, and Z is a good idea? I'm going to share with you my opinion, and I'm not going to say that's going to cost you $350, right? And so ask someone. You might not have someone on your staff that are volunteer, but there are some nice people in order to say, hey, I'm familiar with this. We should think of these things. If you don't know, ask. Right? Or you may consult with an attorney one time who, if you're doing a lot of business like this, let's put all the terms in on a flat fee, and then you could just change the language on this, because now you got a go-by that's legit for your needs. So sometimes you got to invest in yourself too. But those are just some of the terms. Every contract is going to be different. If it's employment, it may be different than if it's a real estate project or a third-party contractor. It's just going to depend on what it is. It could be bringing in an artist. Churches bring in artists. Artists give you their contract with all their riders. I can't tell you how many times Jeffrey had to go out and get Fiji waters and 5 Skittles, 3 reds, 2 blues. But speakers, it's good to have terms in place. You're bringing in a speaker. We're in a COVID world. What happens if COVID cancels your event? All right, if you go virtual with it, is it going to be the same price for them to fly in or speak for 15 minutes from their home on a screen? Is it flying into your church? So these are just things that someone who's thinking will spell out on the front end, because as much as possible, we want to think about what could happen and address it on the front end, so we're on the same page.
Yeah. I definitely think that is so true. I mean, when you think about the amount of detail that goes into a contract, some people, and many people, and I've been guilty of this before too, where you get an agreement for something and you just sign it, you don't actually read it. But when I actually took time to sit and read a couple of contracts, and I remember when we took a trip, we were in South Africa, and it was before Lola and I were about to buy a house, and I was just like, you know what, Terrell, you too old to be just signing your name to contract. You got too much to lose.
Send me that contract. I remember that.
And we sat there, we went through it, and then you were like, okay, all right, this is good. Hey, here, I'd ask some questions about this. And I'm just like, you know what? Had I not actually taken time to really look at that contract, I could have signed myself up for something and been legally liable for something. Right. And so, I mean, I think even in the same sense for churches, having to understand, like, you got too much to lose. And I think your focus on the mission of your church should not be distracted by unnecessary legal matters because we took a shortcut around, getting agreements. And I do think it's not so much only from the standpoint of just like, hey, we're going to be on guard against people who are trying to do us wrong. But I think it's just having that clear understanding, because one of the things that I've seen, and I've witnessed it firsthand of, seeing churches fall apart because, a misunderstanding, and it wasn't anything illegal that got done. It was a misunderstanding of how money was handled, and these people got upset with these people, and it just caused the church to split, and the church just fell apart. And it's just like, why this could have been resolved had there been more clarity and explanation laid out.
Exactly. That's exactly true. And I want to see churches, a lot of times in the church, we are defensive. We play defense when something arises, but we don't take the time to be proactive. let's play offense, right? And so you get the right people in place on the front end to help avoid some of these things. I don't want to always be taking it as it comes. I want to sit, be strategic, and think about how can we avoid this situation, right? So you mentioned our trip to South Africa. Y'all, 5 years ago, I crashed Terrell and Lola's trip. We went to see them for Christmas. He was in town, and they were like, "Yeah, we're going to South Africa for February. Y'all should come." His wife told me. I was like, "Yeah, Jeffrey, let's go." Right? And like I think that's around the time of my birthday. Let's go. But I'm laughing and joking. So we had an amazing time. We spent almost 2 weeks in South Africa, all across the country. But Terrell, I think one night when we were there, this was when we had flown over to Cape Town, and we were sitting around with Chris, and we were talking about doing something like this one day. Do you remember that conversation? We talked kind of casually about. I said we should start. You like maybe do something for churches or something. And look at us 5 years later. The Lord has brought it full circle. Okay, I'm back now.
Absolutely.
When you mentioned our trip to South Africa, I just thought about that.
No, I mean, I was thinking about that myself because even when I was, talking to Lola about, the idea, and she was just like, you know what, I think that'd be something really good. I mean, that's something that's really on your heart, on Harriet's heart. Like, I know y'all spend a lot of time building your businesses, working with your clients, but this is something that you guys have talked about. So I'm like, you know what, we should definitely move forward with this.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Awesome. So I know one of the things that if you're just joining, today we're talking about contracts and just kind of the role that they play in the church environment, like why they need to be in place. Harriet talked through, hey, what are some of the critical or common terms that should be laid out in the contract? And so I definitely think that it's a valuable resource for people to really pay attention to some of these things, and also join the Facebook group because all of these videos will stay in the library, in the Facebook group, as well as the YouTube page. So if you came late and you're like, hey, I missed the first part, you can always go back and watch them. That's why we created the Facebook group and the YouTube page, so you can access it and you can share it with your pastor, share it with ministers, share it with church administrators, because the stuff we're going to talk about in what we talked about today and we'll talk about in the future, I think are going to be things that really help you on the administrative, the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I'm not going to be telling you how to preach a sermon. I'm not going to tell you.
It's not our thing.
I'm just going to make sure that, hey, you don't get in trouble financially so you can continue to preach your sermons.
That's
it. So all the stuff in the background that most churches usually don't have a team of people or people in place to help with that, we want to shine some light on those things so those background things don't become issues that stop you from being able to do your mission and impact the lives of the people that you are called to reach.
I want to jump on one more contract that's important. I think more churches should have. You need to have contracts with your pastor and church staff, even if it's volunteer. There are volunteer agreements. You need to spell out the terms of, hey, whatever your pastor is, are y'all going to give him this amount of vacation deal, days per year paid, sick time? Are you offering him benefits? Are there metrics that you desire him to meet, right? Is he required with this pay to go visit the sick, phone weddings, whatever? It's just easier if you can spell out the terms, because these type of things will tear a church apart. And this is particularly for my non-denominational churches, where you kind of, I always laugh at the non-denominational church. You make your own rules, right? You make your own rules. You really do, right? A lot of times you see it. We stepped out. We're not Baptist anymore. We're not AME. We're not United Methodist. I can't deal with all that. But you still need rules. You need bylaws, and you need to be structured, and you need a board, right? No one person should make all the decisions unilaterally, because it's not all your money coming in here. But you need these things, but it needs to be spelled out, because this is where issues arise in the background that can tear a church up, like Terrell said. These are the things that split the church, right? So your musicians, are they on salary? Or do they need to be there for sound check? Are you tired of this? Are you tired of the drummer walking in 20 minutes after service started because he playing at another church? No shade to drummers. It could have been anybody, guitars, whatever. Right? I'm a former church musician, but it's just like these are things that you need to make aware, because the ministry can go forth smoothly. The Lord's word can go forth smoother when the business is taken care of. And a lot of times the devil is in the details. Have you ever heard that? Same thing in the church. It gets in the details, and then that prevents us from focusing on what we came here to do. Worship the Lord, praise the Lord and get out his word. So yeah, employment contracts with the church are critically important, even down to volunteer agreements. What are they doing? What can't they do? What is the church liable for? Does the church realize that they're liable for the actions or inactions of volunteers? You either knew or you should have known. So these are things that are real things that I could spend tons and tons of time talking on, but they're real things that churches need to have in place.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that you bring that up because I mean, just to give people a idea of some of the topics that we're going to talk about, because I do think that, the employment contracts are one area that I've seen a lot of people have issues with. And whether or not, like say, do we have a contractual relationship with the pastor, like with volunteers and the staff to where there, especially when it comes down to the pastor. I mean, from a financial standpoint, I mean, there are things you want to spell out there because there are certain things that get different tax treatment. And if you do not spell it out properly, you could trigger an issue with the IRS and IRS reporting. So we're definitely in later parts of this series, we're going to talk about, stuff like that, like contracts for, employment contracts. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about, you brought up about a board, just kind of the oversight and the advisory, like kind of the role that they play. So we'll definitely dive into more of those topics. But as we said in the intro, Harriet's running a law firm. I'm running an accounting firm. So we aren't going to be here all day.
Right. You see me at work right now? As soon as we get off. No.
Yes.
But we're happy to share with you. So if there are topics that you want us to hit, as Terrell has said, drop them in the comments, post them in the group. If you've not joined our Facebook group, it's Church Law+Finance on Facebook. Join the group. We want to interact with you. This is your time to get the free advice that does not create a legal contract that you cannot sue us on if you rely on. Right? So get with us. Let us know. We're going to be here for a while. And you're going to get about 30 minutes, but we love that. We would love to share with you because the Lord has gifted us to do this. And so why not be a blessing to God's people with it?
Yeah. And I will say some of your questions may require a little bit of research. So if you ask the question live during the session and we don't answer it live, it may be because, hey, we got to do a little bit more research because there are some factors to be considered with some questions. So we will do our best, like I said, to work and get back to answering the questions, whether that's we do it during the live or maybe we will post a response actually in the group to the question that was asked. Because like I said, not every question will be answered live because it may require some research or a little bit more context for us to really point you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in again. Definitely join the group on Facebook. It is Church Law+Finance. And not only join the group, tell others about the group and definitely drop your questions in the comments. Let us know what you think about the format and because we really do want to be very helpful. And, it's our pleasure to be because we both have talked about how much we love the mission that if you're a church leader, you're a pastor, you're a minister, you're an administrator, and you are walking in that purpose and that calling, I have so much respect for you because that's not my calling. My calling is to do what I'm doing. And we want to do what we can to help support you and what you're doing. And again, making sure these background issues don't distract you and your church from being able to reach and impact the people in your community or the people at large that you have been called to actually have a positive influence on. So thank you guys for tuning in today.
We appreciate it.